Hello again, we're back and we're continuing with our baker's percentages problem. So on Tuesday, I asked you to fill in this table to find out what percent of water and sourdough starter I use to make a loaf of bread. So you should have found that the recipe calls for 70% water and 30% sourdough starter. Amazing work if you did, and if you didn't, that's all right. I read a lot of your responses and I was so happy to see that people use different methods. Shout out to the people who use the double number lines. That's my favorite method personally. So if you did make double number lines, they might look like this. So I like the double number lines for this problem because I noticed that you can count by 50s pretty easily to get all of the measurements for the ingredients in grams. So remember the ingredients were at 150 grams, 350 grams, and 500 grams. So it's pretty easy to count by 50 to get all of those. And that made it easy to set up the top of my number line. Then on the bottom, I saw that I had 10 tick marks going up to where 100% was at, and 100% was 500 grams. Remember, 100%, our whole in this problem, was the flour. So I knew since there were 10 tick marks, I could count by tens to get up to 100. If you use the table, you might have noticed that you could divide by 5 to go from 500 to 100, and then do the same to the other numbers, 350 and 150, to find the percentages there. So that's another way to do that. And that's pretty much it, but that's a lot of different ways to solve this problem. And I was happy to see that lots of you actually wrote your responses for the very last question, explaining in a full sentence how you solve this problem. So thank you for doing that. Let's get a little further into this problem though. So this assignment is going to have two parts. First, we're going to think about one more ingredient in the bread. So my recipe also calls for 10 grams of salt. So if 500 grams of flour is still our 100%, what percent are the 10 grams of salt? So we have a new table for this now, and I'll show you the table. So you can fill in this table using any of the strategies that we just talked about, or maybe a new one. The second part of this problem, I'm asking you to think about how percents change when what we call the whole changes. So for number 2, flour is not going to be our whole anymore. We're not talking about baker's percentages anymore. We're going to think about all the ingredients combined together in a bowl. Okay? So first of all, how many grams do we have when we combine 500 grams of flour, 350 grams of water, and 150 grams of sourdough starter? So think about this for a second. How much is that all together? 500 plus 350 plus 150. You got it! It's 1,000 grams total. So for number 2, 1,000 grams is our 100%. What percent are each of the ingredients, flour, water, sourdough starter? And you can use this new table on your assignment to try to answer this question. So your percents are going to be different from assignment number 1. And your assignment is to use anything you know about percentages and ratios to fill in this table. You can even go back to the beginning of this video to see some of the strategies that we talked about for Tuesday's problem. And then at the end, the same thing that we did on Tuesday, you're going to tell me the strategy that you used. So again, I'm going to give you these tables. I'm going to give you some double number lines that you can use as well on your Google Classroom assignment. And again, use anything that you know, any of these strategies to help you answer these questions. Make sure that you submit your work by the end of the day on Friday, so I can give you feedback, but also so you can take the weekend to relax and maybe even bake some bread now that you have a recipe. Until next week, stay safe and wash your hands. See you soon.